On the weekend between races, the 1983 Eurovision Song Contest took place in Munich and saw Corinne Hermès, singing for Luxembourg, win with Si la vie est cadeau, narrowly beating the Israeli and Swedish entries. It was the Grand Duchy's fifth win, placing it alongside France in the all-time wins table. Two songs received no points in the contest: Remedios Amaya for Spain with Quien Menachem Me Barca, and Turkey's Çetin Alp and the Shortwave with Opera. Back in November, 10-year-old American schoolgirl Samantha Smith had written a letter to the new Soviet leader Yuri Andropov, in which she expressed her worries about the renewed Cold War tensions and asked, "Why do you want to conquer the world, or at least our country?" The letter was printed in Pravda, and, after a little prompting from Smith, Andropov sent a reply in late April, reassuring her that the USSR desired peace and inviting her to visit the country. A media frenzy ensued, and Smith and her parents took Andropov up on the offer, visiting Moscow and Leningrad in the summer before spending time at the Artak summer camp on the Black Sea. In France, the northern city of Lille opened its metro system using automatic driverless trains, the first such system in Europe and the second in the world after the Portliner in Kobe, Japan. Meanwhile, the F1 world descended on Imola near Bologna in northern Italy for the third running of the San Marino Grand Prix. 2 weeks earlier at Paul Ricard, the Renault team had done what they always seem to do and put in a good performance at their home race, and the local fans at Imola would be hoping their beloved Ferraris could do the same. The Scuderia, for their part, had a new rear suspension on all their cars, which had been tried out at Brands Hatch, and also special fiberglass air ducts to cool the front brakes, always a vital component at Imola. Further down the pecking order, Ozella had taken delivery of their first batch of Alfa Romeo V12 engines, complete with gearbox, transmission and rear suspension. Designer Tony Southgate & Co. cobbled together a testbed car for Ghinzani to drive, which was dubbed the FA1E. Over at Alfa Romeo themselves, the Euro racing team had reacted to De Cesaris's French disqualification for an empty fire extinguisher by firing team coordinator Gérard Ducarouge, and the team looked a little unsteady as they prepared the cars for qualifying. This week's Arrow's sponsors were local clothing company Marilena, while Ram were back down to one car again after Jean-Louis Schlesser's sponsors had backed out and the team hadn't seen any of the promised money. Once again, the turbos dominated qualifying, with Arnoux earning a place in Tifosi hearts by putting his Ferrari on pole. Nelson Piquet, though, managed to squeak into second place by just 0.003 seconds to deny an all-scarlet front row, so Tombe would line up alongside countryman Prost on row 2. Patrese and Chiva were on row 3, underlining the fact that Ferrari, Brabham and Renault were at this stage the three teams to reckon with. Winkelhock put in another great shift to put the ATS 7th, only 0.02 seconds behind Chiva, with De Cesaris, De Angelis and Baldi making up the top 10 and Rosberg the top Atmo car in 11th. The McLaren team must have been looking forward to their upcoming translation to the ranks of the turbos, with 18th and 24th the best they could manage here, while Ghinzani in the new Ozella Alpha and Salazar's Sol Ram were the non-qualifiers. With most teams planning to make fuel stops, the teams got together and agreed to stop on pre-arranged laps in order to minimise the risk of incidents. Sunday dawned cloudy, and De Cesaris fluttered a few hearts in the Alfa Romeo pit when his throttle stuck open at Acqua Minerale and he rolled the spare car into the tyre wall, but luckily both chassis and driver were unharmed and would take the start with no problem. Keke Rosberg left the pits to boos and whistles from the crowd, who hadn't forgiven him for taking Tombe out of the lead in Long Beach, and De Angelis' Renault engine ingested a turbocharger, and he would have to take to the grid in the spare 93T. Finally, though, all the cars were on the grid and the rain had held off, the parade lap was done and the lights went green, and 25 cars roared off the grid while Piquet rolled forward a bit and stopped, having stalled the engine. Miraculously, everyone missed him, and a quick push from the marshals got him away in a cloud of tyre smoke. The Ferraris were therefore up front, just where the crowd wanted them, with Arnoux leading Tombe, who had his hands full fending off both Patrese and Prost, with De Cesaris and De Angelis behind. Eddie Cheever had got a slow start, and the cause was soon apparent as his turbocharger expired on lap 2. While the cameras were watching Eddie smoking his way around the circuit, Patrese got past Tombe into second and set about chipping away at the lead Arnoux had already pulled out, while Prost squared up to the second Ferrari. After 4 laps, the gap between Arnoux and Patrese was just under a second, with Tombe and Prost another 2 behind, then 3 seconds back to De Cesaris, who led teammate Baldi by a whopping 10 already, with Rosberg coming up the field in 7th. If Patrese getting past Tombe had quietened the Tifosi down, on lap 6 he silenced them entirely by taking the lead from Arnoux. It didn't matter that he was an Italian driver in Italy overtaking a Frenchman. That Frenchman was driving a Ferrari, and that was all that mattered. The other Ferrari-driving Frenchman, Tombe, meanwhile, had managed to put a bit of fresh air between himself and a chasing Prost, and the front four had settled down into a rhythm. There was a sudden flurry of retirements, with Alboreto and Lauda both coming to rest at the same spot a lap apart, and Cecotto retiring in the pits to make it 5 retirements in the first 12 laps. Behind the leaders, Piquet was slowly moving up too, making his way into the top 10 by lap 20, but suffering a bit from worn tyres as the track temperature climbed. Arnoux was the first scheduled stop at the end of lap 20, a 16-second stop dropping him to 5th, and then there was a gap of a few laps until the rest of the front runners started coming in. Prost and De Cesaris came in together on lap 27, which promoted Arnoux back to 3rd, while De Cesaris lost time by overshooting his pit and having to back up. Prost had been far enough ahead of 6th place Rosberg that he didn't lose a place to him, and rejoined back behind Arnoux, who was now 4th. As Warwick binned his Tolman at Rivazza on the stroke of half distance, the leading pair of Patrese and Tombe had yet to stop, and Mansell came in the Ford-powered Lotus to make the team's first ever pit stop. Then on lap 32 it was Tombe's turn. 15 seconds dead, and he emerged without losing 2nd place. So now it was just Patrese and Piquet, who was by now 5th, to stop, and the leader did so on lap 34. Unfortunately, he overshot ever so slightly and the team had to budge over, and then a flustered Ricciardo forgot to keep his foot on the brake, giving his team trouble with the front left. A 24-second stop allowed Tombe back into the lead to the delight of the crowd. So now it was a sprint to the finish, and over the next 10 laps or so, Patrese slowly chipped away at Tombe's lead, with the Tifosi in the stadium all hoping for something to befall the white and blue Brabham and lead to a Ferrari 1-2. Piquet's engine went on lap 42, which gave the red-clad hordes hope. With 10 laps to go, Patrese had the gap down to 1.7 seconds, and the stage was set for a close finish. On lap 54, with just 6 to go, the Brabham slingshotted past the Ferrari on the long, sweeping Tamburello corner while the camera watched empty road for some reason. Ricciardo looked set for his second win for all of half a lap until he lost concentration and went off at Acqua Minerale, going nose first into the tyre barriers in rather decisive fashion. As the Tifosi went wild, Tombe retook the lead, and Arnoux, approaching the scene, had a moment of his own, spinning the Ferrari but keeping it running. To the dismay of the fans, whose blood pressure must have been something to behold, Prost went sailing through, then Tombe came back around to lap Arnoux before he got it moving again, still in 3rd. The drama wasn't quite over yet either, as Mansell's rear wing collapsed at speed and pitched him into a spin, and both Winkelhock and Baldi had engine failures all within the last couple of laps. But nobody in the crowd cared, as Tombe spluttered across the line in a misfiring Ferrari to take his 2nd win for the team, with Prost 2nd and Arnoux 3rd, and Rosberg, Watson and the ever-reliable Sierra taking the lower points. But the fans would wait in vain for the numbers 27 Ferrari to come back round to take the applause. Tombe coasted to a halt out of fuel on his slowing down lap and rode, slightly ignominiously, back to the podium in an Alfa Romeo Corse car. Riccardo Patrese would later describe his accident as purely my mistake, but was hurt by the Italian fans cheering at his accident, and it would be some years before he enjoyed driving at Imola again. The result took Tombe to 3rd in the table, while Prost was now equal on points with Piquet at the top, and Ferrari took the top spot in the constructors' race from McLaren.
And I've got to stop because I've got a lump in my throat.